Welcome to the Oracle Codex Podcast. In this podcast, we are unfolding the divine mysteries and remembrances of the Oracle. What is her story? What was lost that we are now reclaiming? And what is her medicine? Let's unwind and reweave our sacred history. I'm your host, Grace, and I'll be holding space during our journey together. Love you so much, and let's dive in. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Oracle Codex episode 9. Today I have the beautiful Kayla, and she is an ex-runway model, pro-hormone personal coach. She is a boss girl in her soft era, helping women trade hormone hating hustle with good rest, food, and stronger curves. That's on her Instagram bio. She has her own program and coaching service, supporting women in meeting their goals while respecting their bodies, among so much else. I'm so excited to have you here, love. Welcome.
Me too. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we started recording, I was telling Kayla that in the spiritual space, which like most of the episodes thus far in the season have been with these beautiful oracles, tapping into spirituality, into the ethereal realms. And I really feel like a lot of women need support in giving themselves access to strength training, to food, to trusting the innate wisdom of the body. And that is something that Kayla is a pro at. She's been working with this stuff for a long time. And I'm just so happy that we can talk about this today and, honor the airy fairy, like ethereal realms, but also know that we're allowed to be strong and be connected deeply to our body's needs and to trust our
Mhm.
hormones and all of that stuff. So
Yeah,
I love your work so much. And
thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very honored to hear that. That's um the uh the medicine of encouragement, I call it. And so thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we're just gonna jump right in. I would love to know a little bit about your journey coming into a hormonally supportive lifestyle. And on your Instagram, you shared that you found your inner oracle and you've kind of just been trusting this. But it's interesting because like with the oracle, sometimes it gets airy fairy and we look into the ethereals and all that stuff, but the oracle is also the body.
Mhm.
So what was your experience kind of finding this rootedness in your being as a human?
Yeah, absolutely. So my introduction to my oracle was as my body and actually embodying and integrating a lot of things that I had been through, a lot of choices that I had made, that I can't even in hindsight say were misaligned or out of alignment because it all God works all things for good, And so it was part of my journey and part of my story. But as you mentioned, I am an ex-runway model. So from a young age, my fashion career started in California on the West Coast, in LA and San Francisco, back and forth. And then I graduated high school early so that I could move to New York and really pursue that career and was successful. But along with my New York transition also came a lot of pressure that I wasn't expecting or experiencing on the West Coast because the markets were just different.
Mhm.
And so, along with the East Coast market and the agency expectations being different there, I started to succumb to really disordered eating habits and a really bad relationship with my own body. It started to become like she was the enemy because I was constantly being in that industry. You're just a commodity. You're constantly being compared to other women.
Mhm.
Um, and if you're not a walking clothes hanger in so many words, you're not gonna fit the mold type of a thing. So trying to push my career to the European markets, um, I stepped into a very, very unhealthy pattern of distorted eating and thinking and viewing of my own body. And I put her through hell. Um, and so I have so much love for that really young version of myself who was trying to fit into a box that wasn't worth fitting into, to be quite honest. But at the time, I didn't know that that was the case. But my wake up call from that era was basically blacking out on a subway in New York and waking up like 20 stops north of where I should have gotten off to go home after a long day of work. And thank God I was safe. You know, I wasn't like mugged or worse during that pass out phase, but I passed out because I wasn't nourishing myself. I didn't have energy. I hadn't eaten in like 3 days. And so I just passed out. My body was like, okay, well, we can't keep up with just adrenaline fueling you. So we're just gonna like, oh, shut you down so that you can kind of recharge a little bit. And that started a whole cascade of experiences with some health complications that started to really come into play. So I ended up going home to California over the holidays that year, a little bit later, and my mom took me to my, checkups, doctor visits, and the doctor was just like, you're not going to be able to have children if you keep going down this road. And if you're ready to make that decision, that's completely within your sovereignty. But there's just some complications here that are really risking your future in a lot of ways as a trade-off for the future that you're trying to build in the industry. And I wasn't ready to sacrifice that possibility. I'm not a mom yet, but when I was 18, I just wasn't ready to sacrifice that possibility for myself in the future. I didn't know what the future would hold. So I decided that that was really the turning point for me to start to prioritize my health and my own mental well-being at that phase of my life, and that this career just really wasn't going to be supportive of who I wanted to be long term and the possibilities that I wanted to have available to me. So that really kickstarted my passion for nutrition and fitness, because I got my first little basic certification just as a way to heal my own view on activity levels and nutrition, because up until my modeling career, I was very active, horseback riding, dancing like 25 hours a week. I was a competitive dancer. I was a competitive martial artist. I was so active all the time. And so I never even thought about what I was eating other than I'm hungry and I'm super active. So I need to refuel so that I can go and be active, because that's what I loved doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always just, I mean, I remember when I was younger, my mom, she was constantly getting comments from people, unsolicited opinions of like, gosh, does she eat? Like she's so skinny. Cause I'm 6 feet tall. So I took a growth spurt and it was like, I looked anorexic, but I was eating so much food when I was little.
Yeah.
And so anyway, she had me on like weight gainer protein shakes and like all that kind of stuff when I was littler,
Oh.
trying to help me fatten me up a little bit, but that was just like my makeup. I had super struggles with trying to put on any good like muscle mass or anything like that when I was little. So I just kind of went back to the drawing board after I retired from modeling, and I wanted to start with empowering myself with education and knowledge. With being really active, that kind of paints me as a tomboy, but I was also super nerdy, and I still am. I love books, I love learning. So I just threw myself into research and studies and got certified, and spent about a year just really practicing what I had learned. And I wasn't a coach yet. I didn't do any of that trying to be a coach. I honestly wanted to help myself and kind of get my life back together with my health as the foundation. And that year, I really transformed. I fell in love with strength training and was eating good food and put some good body weight back on, got my period back and all that good stuff. Really kind of found my footing. And at about a year mark, I think it was, the manager of the gym that I was just hanging out and working out at asked me if I'd ever thought of being a coach because he noticed such a profound transformation in myself in the year that I'd been going there. And he had no idea that I was certified. And so he just was thinking that, maybe he had a good little worker bee over here sitting in the wings.
Yeah.
And he did, because I quickly became the most popular trainer. I left college and I fell in love with working with that transformational process with women specifically. But at that time, I wasn't even dealing with the hormone cycle like you see me working with now.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, jump forward a few years, and I'd restarted my career elsewhere. I'd built up clientele elsewhere and went through a divorce. And that really was kind of a catalyst for sort of my oracular awakening, I call it, where my divine feminine started to come forth, because the divorce really pushed me massively into my masculine as a self-preservation mechanism. And at the time, I wasn't aware of that. But as I slowly got, older, more experiences, more hindsight is 2020, so to speak, it became clearer and clearer to me that this hustle matrix, I call it, of really hyper masculine ways of being and doing in this world, were not designed for women or for women's best interests. And so I just really started soul searching. That's when I really got introduced to breath work and meditations. I had a wonderful mentor with breath work and meditation for a while, and just really for the first time in my life, challenged myself to the opposite of what I was used to. Previously, extremely active, extremely pursuant of external knowledge and validation. I went the opposite and went completely internal and turned my focus inwards and went quiet and slowed down and just like shut off all the voices around me. And that was kind of the introduction to my oracle, because that's really what led me to the vision in one of my meditation practice sessions, where the divine feminine was really calling to me to go back to the biological truth of who I am as a woman on a physiological level. And that has become the foundation of how I view the lens that I view pretty much everything through. That's like the truth, the foundation of how I view everything now is that biological factor. So,
Wow. That ending like gave me such chills because I've
oh,
had such similar visions where like there's just this desire to be with the organic physiology of this body, you know.
mhm.
Thank you so much for sharing your story because
Oh, you're
it
welcome. Thank
always,
you for asking.
yeah, it just provides women like such deep medicine of acceptance of self and also, it's such a beautiful way to just relate and hear one another and just know that we're not alone. And
Yeah.
I I really kind of am being drawn to talk lightly on, this experience that we women are kind of, you talked about like kind of um the hustle bustle and the
Mhm.
comparison that so many women are put kind of into just by societal programming and especially
Mhm.
with modeling. And we see these women on magazines and we're like, oh, that's beautiful, right? Oh, that's what I should look like. And I see it firsthand with my sisters. Even like just there's so much comparison, there's so much I should be tiny 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 to
Yeah.
be beautiful. And
Social media too. Everything is tweaked and airbrushed and the perfect angles. And, now you don't even have to subject yourself to the checkout stand with magazine covers all glossy, making you feel horrible about yourself. Now all you have to do is open up your phone.
yeah.
It's amazing. It's just, yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, yeah, like literally programming us to
Yeah.
believe that we're like this perfect body, like you talked about, this perfect physiology that only wants to support us, only wants us to be healthy
Mhm.
and our most vibrant self. Like, oh, that's not
Mhm.
good enough. And
Yeah.
it's just crazy because when you really like tap into the body and like that beautiful experience you had where she just came online and she was like, hey, like I'm right here. I'm
Yeah.
wanting to, help you and teach you and like talk with you. And so many women are just, like it's hard, I think, to loosen that mirror of like trying to, or I guess it wouldn't be mirror, but just looking at somebody else and thinking that that's better than this.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I've been talking actually with so many of the people who've come on lately, like the comparison models and all of these mental programmings that so many people are under. It's like guilt, shame,
Mhm.
comparison, um, and
Very low frequencies, just very harmful frequencies for us to be stuck in. And it's a looshing loop. I don't know if you're
yes,
very familiar with that, but there
yeah,
is a there is a spiritual aspect, when you talk about, I like how you call it airy fairy, because I get that a lot where people are like, I don't understand how this really applies. Like it's so woo woo, it's up in
yeah,
the clouds type of thing. And I'm like, I totally get that because I used to be that. I was like, oh, it's just this crazy woo woo, airy fairy type. It's not real. It
yeah,
is every bit as real as you and I talking to each other right now. It doesn't really make sense how you and I are talking to each other right now through a screen, through
yeah,
microphones, like earpieces, like hooked up through things that we can't see,
yeah,
and it's frequencies.
yeah,
There's so much going on in this world, in the realms that we can't see. There's more going on below the surface, so to speak, than there is above the surface. And finally, science is starting to catch up to that reality that, very ancestral lineages have known in our wombs and our DNA codes for eons.
yeah. I love that so much. I love that you said Lucian because yeah, that's like a very, very powerful way to describe what women have been going through and
Mhm.
are going through, and even looking at history, like the trendings of female bodies, like it was curvy and then it was the flapper era where it's like, hey, like no boobs, like, and then
Mhm.
it's always changing, right, where it's like we're kind of molded to fit this perception of what somebody else wants from us.
Yeah.
And I would love, like, if you have any within your own deep dives and within your own introspection of like, why do you feel like this has happened to women? Like this kind
Mhm.
of us being compared to other women and not being good enough. And, there's always these molds that we should fit into.
Yeah.
So is it kind of just like this fallen masculine energy, or is it just like us not believing in ourselves?
I think that there's, again, kind of going back to, there's multiple layers to everything
Yeah.
because we don't just live in a limited 3D reality. So, like, on a 3D perspective, I see it as um, it's a great business model.
Yeah.
It's a great business model. And this is not throwing shade at any particular economic capacity, but just women are the majority of the consumers and spenders. And this is actually
Mhm.
in biological alignment to how we are designed because we are consumptive. If you look at the way that our biology, the vagina, the womb, consumes in order to co create and bring as a portal new life into this world, it's a constant death and birth cycle within our wombs, and it's a consumptive organ. It takes and then it gives back. That's the circuitry. And that biological truth is reflected in our society in this matrix, this consumerist matrix, where it's just like, what do I need to buy to be? What do I need to do to keep up with the Joneses of, or the
Mhm.
Kardashians, of whatever standard of beauty is considered beautiful now? And the thing is that beauty is our birthright as women. But the fact that we outsource that birthright and give our power away to a society that is only interested in keeping you and siphoning your power away from you, hooked on all of these creams and surgeries and systems that just keep you stuck and never actually experiencing your innate beauty that is your birthright, because it's already within you. Like I truly believe every single woman is beautiful. And I'm not just talking about the physical aspect. Every man is beautiful. And I'm not talking just about the physical aspect. Like, we are created in the image and likeness of God, source, creator, and that has such a ripple effect to every single aspect of how we kind of can integrate and embody or reject things that are placed in our system. So on a 3D level, it's just a great business model to keep us hooked on phonics, so to speak. But on a more esoteric, spiritual level, I honestly believe that we are have constantly been in a battle of good versus evil and that polarity dance, and keeping women oppressed isn't the right word, but that's the only thing that's coming to me right now. Keeping women distracted by these very shallow pursuits or focuses, like brunettes wanting to be blonde, guilty. Straight hair wanting to be curly hair wanting to be straight, skin needing to be more tan or more pale, or bigger boobs, guilty. Smaller boobs, like bigger butts, whatever it is, keeping us distracted. It's just like we don't have the bandwidth left over to focus on what's really really important and really valuable, or even to ask ourselves and question, what's important to me? What should I be putting my life force energy into? You know, I stopped going to the salon. 4 hours in the salon. Do you know how much value are in my 4 hours?
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't anymore. So like, I cut my own hair, or my sister's a retired hairstylist. She'll cut my hair and we'll talk about things that are valuable, and it takes 30 minutes, and then I move on with my life, because it's just not a value exchange anymore for me. And I'm not like knocking hairstylists or that whole experience or anything, but for me anymore, that value exchange isn't important to me. And there's other things that, you may feel led to align with or not align with that I don't. But that's the purpose of having your own sovereignty and getting to make those decisions yourselves. So it's anyway, very long answer, sorry, but it's like that.
Oh,
It's more than one dimension, you know what I mean? The physical and the spiritual level of distraction and energy siphoning.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so happy you took it multidimensional because it really is. And I'm so thankful too that you're talking about distraction, because that's literally the whole thing. Like, even with, all the main, like the media and all the propaganda going all the
Mhm.
time, it's like, oh, another thing that's actually
Totally.
just distracting us from the what's actually going on. And I love yeah, that you mentioned that, like, the well, it just goes back to like the feminine and the body is already whole, and like these
Mhm.
distractions of like, if I do this I'll be whole, if I travel to this location I'll be whole, if I get this hair color I'll be whole. And it's all of these things are distracting us from the fact that we already are whole. And I was literally talking
Yeah.
with my friend about this the other day. I'm so thankful that you're bringing up the distraction, because it's such a powerful notion and energy to tap into, um, because the humans already whole, right? And then we have like these polarities of masculine and feminine, and we get to like play
Mhm.
around with them and learn from them. And you actually, I think, are kind of leaning into and doing work with like polarity energies too, hey,
Mhm.
a little bit studying them.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's a very, very powerful energy to like look at those two energies and then look at the inner child, who is like the union of both, and is already whole and is already like in perfect connectivity to God. And
Yeah.
when women can just look into the body and seek the oracle and seek the stillness. Like obviously easier said than done because there's so
Mhm.
many stimulations and
Yeah.
distractions, the phone, the magazines, the TV shows, the comparison, like the woundedness.
Yeah.
Um,
It is war. It's all out psychological warfare.
yeah.
And men have their own version of it. They're not like a lot of people like to blame the patriarchy, and I'm not saying the patriarchy is blameless if for in any way, but they're not immune to the warfare. It just looks different for them. So once I understood that, because I went through a phase where I was very angry feminist, for lack of a better word. I was very like rebellion against the patriarchy and and masculine is, all men are a certain way and blah
Yeah.
blah blah. And it only was when I started to understand the inner polarity, like you're mentioning, within all of us, that I was able to integrate the light and the shadow of even the masculine side of myself and excuse me, and be able to, with compassion and more understanding than I'd ever had before, actually see my brothers in this world as standing alongside of me in this war or falling in battle. And that just became a whole new perspective that brought a lot of, um, it's very painful to look at, but
Mhm.
it's very empowering to see each other that way instead of seeing each other as enemies, because
Yeah.
I think that this gender war has gone on purpose with very nefarious intentions for way too long. And so when I speak of divine feminine and feminine empowerment, it's alongside of really healthy masculinity, because we don't exist without each other. It's the co-creational capacity, it's the circuitry. And on a higher level, that duality completely disappears because it's union, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I'm so thankful you're speaking on that because I was also an angry feminist. I feel like it's almost like a icky rite of passage when you kind of flip to the other side and you're like, oh wow, that was a horrible, horrible delusion.
I
Um,
see you, girl. I see you. Yeah, I get that.
yeah. And it's like to place yourself as separate from your man, from your brother, from your friend who is a male. It's like again, like you said, it's just constant us versus them war, just
Yeah.
so many distractions. I love how deep you're going here. I love it. It's like so fun.
I know. People look at my Instagram and they're like, what is going on? Like today she's talking about squats and then tomorrow she's talking about war with the masculine. Like, what's happening?
It's important
See,
though.
I don't fit in a box. I can't help it.
You know what's so funny? I was talking with this beautiful woman and she was sharing with me it's really hard for women, spiritual women to like niche down like
Yeah,
in your personality in your business because it's like, yeah, I'll just talk about this one thing like Kayla, yeah, exercise or squats and then it's like but the woman like she just sees everything and it's like I can't
everything.
not share this wisdom, right? It just pours
Yeah.
through us. Yeah.
And that's the oracle, right? That you're talking about, that's I love in the biblical worldview, if you look at scripture, wisdom is referred to in the feminine. If you study the original languages that different places in scripture were written about or written in, and the part of my original what I mentioned earlier, like this vision that I had where the divine feminine kind of introduced herself to me. She was very forward. Um, I had the vision and it very much rocked my like Judeo-Christian worldview upbringing because I was raised evangelical Christian. I understood the concept of the Holy Trinity kind of a certain way, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But in this vision, it just sort of knocked my socks off because I was introduced to the Father, the inner child, and the divine feminine mother as the Holy Trinity.
Mm.
And I wrestled with that for a lot because I didn't for a while because I didn't fully understand, like it was so clear and I was just like it just landed like just boom in my womb, it just landed like so accurate. And I wrestled with it and really had to seek and discern because it was it felt at first very combative to the upbringing that I was kind of programmed with, or my original view of the Holy Trinity. And the more that I've studied, the more that I've researched and meditated and prayed on it, the clearer it becomes to me that that is in God's image. It just is. And then we start learning about what scientific discoveries and psychology are bringing forth with the inner child and healing. And now we have masculine and feminine conversations going on. And it's just such a beautiful representation of what life is, because there is nothing without the masculine, feminine. That child doesn't exist without two parts to that whole, it's just,
Mhm.
yeah, it's amazing.
And then you look at like the war that's going on in the liberal kind of space where it's like, no more gender. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that makes
Uh-huh.
sense now.
Uh-huh.
Where it's like,
100%. I'm
yeah.
so glad you brought that up. 100%. Like, I have not talked to anyone about this, but this whole gender war that I'm seeing and the castration of our children and the emasculation of our men and young boys, the masculinization of women and young girls, it's a whole war against the masculine and feminine at higher realms, the creative
Mhm.
potential, not just physical, as above, so below. You can't have one without the other. The 3D doesn't exist in a vacuum, completely divided from the spiritual component. I always say we're spiritual beings having human experiences in a meat suit we call a body.
Yeah.
It's like you can't have one without the other. So this whole gender war, this war on hormones and the physical components of what identify us as one or the other, it has very deep demonic spiritual roots. I am a huge believer in that. So it's so interesting you brought that up.
Hi, Soul Fam. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Oracle Codex Podcast. I so hope that you are enjoying this episode and conversation with the Oracle. If you would like to stay up to date on the Oracle Codex Podcast, I highly encourage you to subscribe on your streaming platform, and as well, you can leave us a big thumbs up, like, or comment down below. If you want to stay up to date with Grace, the host of this podcast, you can find her at creationalcodes.com or on Instagram, Facebook at Grace Crysdale. And without further ado, let's get back into the conversation. Yeah. The more you like dive into the sacredity of what it is to like the like you called the Trinity, like the masculine, feminine, and the child, and it's like just I feel like God is just like putting it in so many women and men's hearts to protect it because it's like the
Yeah.
organic architecture of how this universe is operating within, and it just allows everything to be birthed and then be held and be nourished and like,
Yeah.
and it's very, very sad what they're doing to um the children. And I think that's like why it's so incredibly important and beautiful that we can speak on going into the body and listening
Mhm.
to the oracle and like, okay, all of this stuff. And I love that it's like so interesting that like distraction is such a powerful word in our conversation today because there's so much going on in the world that's like, look over here or listen to me
Yeah.
or be a sheep or like all of this stuff. It's like, don't listen to your body. But when
Yeah.
you do, it's like you kind of shared, it's a terrifying experience of something so profound and so liberating and different landing in the body, but it's like this echo of truth that just hits home so deeply when
Yeah.
you really listen to it. And the hormonal conversation, um, I want to dive into that with you because
Yeah.
like you said, like with the men, like I think our hormones are the worst. I mean, obviously, this is the worst they've ever been for the collective
It's bad. Yeah.
is bad, like with men and testosterone, and then women's
Mhm.
hormones are just all over the place. We have birth control, and All of these normalized things now that are just deteriorating us from this pristine space. So, within like the hormonal energy and the hormonal space, how do we start to look at our body and look at our hormones in a intuitive way? Because like there's this cardio bunny lifestyle, there's this kind of like desire to, you know, do everything, burn your adrenals out, like hustle, matrix, all that stuff. And then yeah, we just get so lost in the sauce of what society pushes on us.
Yeah.
um what's your take on how to kind of fall back into the body, fall back into intuition and listening to the hormones and listening to, you know, or just allowing ourselves to soften and just, yeah,
And
heal?
that last part, allowing ourselves to soften, there's a lot of humility required in that descent because the feminine does not rise, she descends. If you
Mm,
look at, again, biological truth and the reality of our wombs, there's no rising. The biology of men is to rise, to erect, to build,
yeah.
and that is not there in the feminine. So there's a lot of humility required in the surrender. And in that humility, there is what society has painted as it's weak to be soft, right? And that's not the case. When you actually understand the frequency of humility and surrender, trust is really what it boils down to. There is incredible power in that. And it's not a surrender like, mm, I'm just going to be a doormat and lean back on the couch and, just whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you are filleted open by the reality of what is going on, and you are willing to, okay, this just dropped in the cardio bunny thing that you mentioned. There is a massive obsession with women specifically in the cardio bunny lifestyle. My question to those women is, what are you running from? Because I am not going to sit here and debate with anyone the value in doing cardio. Okay, I know the science and the physiological stuff that's going on when we train in zone 2 versus zone, all that stuff. I get it. But when it becomes an addiction and a self abuse pattern playing out, what are you running from, woman? There's always more going on than just, I want to burn body fat off. I'm going to burn calories. There's so much more going on than that. And that's why my work in the fitness matrix and trying to break those chains is um, so different because, yeah, sure, the conversation can start there, but I'm going to take you deeper. So people don't work with me if they're not willing to go deeper because I don't stay on the surface. I can't. It's boring. It's really boring to me. Working out, cardio, eating, it's very simple, guys. The science of it, the discipline of it, the hustle of it is so simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. I'm not saying that. Different words for different reasons, but it's boring. What's really massively impactful is when you take the conversation deeper and you actually descend into that like scary underworld of the feminine, that deep divine feminine. And like what you talked about, I think before we even started recording, was like rooting, needing to have that foundation, that root system really solid in order to support us as we climb higher and higher. It's like that, it's like the oak tree. The branches and the leaves are never going to flourish and grow as high or as wide or as mighty as they can if the root system doesn't mirror that, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, like with that cardio bunny conversation, that's kind of my big question to women that are really, really stuck on the hamster wheel of hustle in that way, because hustle can look a lot of different ways. But in that way specifically, is my question is always, what are you running from, sweetie? Because we need to dig into that to figure out what is actually chasing you, if anything.
Mhm. Wow. I am obsessed with what you just said with like women descend
Mhm.
into like, because I've never heard anybody talk about this. I don't know why,
No.
but it makes so much sense that our energy is like unfolding. And you mentioned trust, and so many women don't feel trust with their partner, or they don't trust God, or they do feel like they're running and protecting themselves from something.
Yeah.
And I just love that you just said like the descent, because I was watching this beautiful video from this healer, and she was saying that the feminine is like this mystery and like this black void of anything and everything, and it's just like unfolding, and you we really
Mhm.
do just like fall into the depths of darkness, but it's not like a bad scary darkness, it's just like
Right.
nothing into everything.
Right.
But
Yeah.
women, I think, so much so like to prop themselves up or try to build. And it's like, of course, we have like this masculine energy in us, but
Hmm.
it's not balanced with
Hmm.
the surrender of the feminine.
Yeah. And women, just like women don't rise, men do. Women don't build, they birth.
Yes.
And
Oh,
I'm not just talking about the biological reality of, being able to birth children. Um, it's energetic codes too we're talking about. It's a co-creative capacity in
yeah.
birthing, gestating, bringing something into through the portal of who we are on a genetic level, an energetic level. There's massive things to unpack there.
Yeah. It's like the magnetics of the woman. And then
Mhm.
I think I don't remember, like the man's supposed to be the is it he's he the push and then the woman's the pull or something. Like there's something with
Mhm.
magnetics where women naturally and organically, like you said, they birth, and it's like this magnetic, effortless creation where it's like, and then men, oh yeah, and then men have to push, and that's like the building of
Mhm.
the effort and the energy of like that being put outside of themselves and exertion and like all of that stuff. Ooh,
Right.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I really
So
love that
beautiful.
because I see, at least right now, I see, obviously there's both. There's push and pull in all of us. We've already established that. But I definitely see that push being very masculine, which is in alignment with that hustle matrix that I talk about, constantly go, 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 push, 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 work, 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 creating outward momentum, protection, provision. These are all very masculine frequencies, whereas the feminine is the consumptive, receptive absorption of energies so that she can then give back, right? She can't just birth a baby by herself. She needs to first receive the sperm in order for that to happen. So it's
Yeah.
this give and take, and vice versa with the men, or the masculine. There's a lot of that push and pull, but it's pretty beautiful to see how we've manifested in physical form kind of a dominant energetic frequency in physical manifestation. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And tying into that, what's your experience been like kind of marrying and merging the boss babe and the softness work? How have you kind of been able to, because the hustle bustle of, being a business owner, having your own beautiful curations, and then also working on softness and trust and really diving into this surrender. What has your experience been like kind of marrying those energies?
Yeah, and it is. I use the term marry on purpose very frequently, so I'm very glad that you use that. It's a union, it's not a I also like the term circuitry, but it really is a union because as much as there is this like exchange in polarities, kind of in some instances, my masculine boss girl kind of rises to the top and takes care of things. And then in other instances, the feminine soft girl surrenders and allows things. There's this dance, right? But it's really a union in that dance. So it's not so much of I'm trying to manipulate. And this is where, to answer your question, this is where I think a lot of us maybe get hung up in our heads, because this is where I got hung up a lot in the beginning of my journey, is like, okay, so I need to manipulate like when my man mode is on and then when my woman is on. And I need to like schedule it, kind of a thing almost like, and it just feels like scheduling sex, like it's just sort of a, and I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it's fine. I've done it before with my husband. Like schedules are just ridiculous. So I need like prep time. Here we go. It's happening on Sunday or whatever, like it's fine. But at the same time, there's something about the natural rhythm taking place that is where our actual power lies. And so for me, when I really started to flip my perspective and my lens and the way that I viewed the world around me and the way that I viewed myself and my capacity to give and receive through the lens of my physiology as a female, that is when that boss babe soft girl thing kind of balanced out. And
Mhm.
it's not about getting it perfect from moment to moment. There's no like perfection just doesn't even really exist. It's about the awareness, because as soon as you have the awareness drawn into that situation, there's so much that becomes illuminated naturally. So again, that rhythm being my monthly menstrual hormone cycle.
Yeah.
And for women who aren't experiencing their fertile years in their hormone cycle, or they have complications, and they're suffering from different things, different manifestations of things that are interrupting their hormone cycle, there's other ways that I work with them that still gives them a rhythm that feels solid and anchors them into something. Because just like the earth is that solid anchor and beautiful boundary for the flow of water, again, masculine,
Mhm.
feminine, the
Mhm.
element of water is very feminine, the element of earth is very masculine. The boundaries and structure and rhythm of the feminine flow being contained like a hug, not contained like chains, okay,
Yeah.
by the structure of our natural cycles, okay, is such a beautiful balance that I've come to see everything through. That is just the lens I see everything through. So,
Wow.
what used to be very basic, boring, hustle oriented, calories in, calories out, work out this way for this result. Did my body respond certain ways? Yes, absolutely, because it's kind of like a, if you mix yellow and blue together, what do you get? You know what I mean? It's sort of like it's just a scientific equation at a certain point.
Yeah.
But when things started to fall apart and break down is when I realized, oh, this can't carry me forever. This hustle, yeah, 2 + 2 = 4, but then the 4 isn't really as satisfying as I thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
The 4 feels pretty empty. The 2 + 2 isn't fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there was a lot of like side effects, so to speak, to that very linear path in my masculine, in my fitness pursuit specifically, which was part of me building my business, that that just very, very much fell flat at a certain point. And women are not flat, we're curvy. So at a certain point, it just didn't resonate with me anymore. And I was having side effects in my health and my mentality that I wasn't willing to continue experiencing in my pursuit of boss babe. And so I just allowed myself at that point to reevaluate, to stop being distracted, to stop running from things because I was, and to actually see myself. Intimacy, it begins with into me see. And you need to see into yourselves before you can expect anyone else to actually witness you. And like these conversations are so beautiful because we're witnessing each other, right? There's a certain level of intimacy here that, you can't get in a big group, or even the intimacy over technology is different than the intimacy in person. The intimacy over text is different than the intimacy over voice phone. You know what I mean? So it's this rhythm of trusting the process. And again, that trust is a very humble surrendering of being able to hold, and that's the masculine component, space and boundaries for the feminine to have the freedom of expression and flow within. And so it became much less about performing and over functioning and doing and white knuckling my ability to produce, whether it's money or a certain amount on the barbell or a certain number of clients in my business, like, produce things, and became much more about, okay, during this phase of my cycle, this is energetically in alignment. This is physiologically in alignment. This helps explain a lot about my experience right now and helps aligned actions feel much more natural. So it does not feel like hustling anymore because everything has a specific season and a time and a place. So you feel at home and held all the time. And so it's less of this struggle bus, like push and pull within yourself, feeling like a bipolar two people thing, hustle and then rest. It is that, but it's also more like it's the dance, it's the rhythm of all of it together, and allowing yourself to trust that process enough to begin to walk that journey is like the scariest part, is just talking about all of this. I know it feels very intangible and out of reach, but I started by just really learning my cycle. And then that awareness begins to open a lot of doors for you, because you will begin to see things through that lens. And if you have someone like me, or there's lots of coaches now who are starting to use this lens in their own voices, you have someone that can kind of cut in line for you and like help you navigate that a little bit quicker, or at least may allow you to feel supported in the process. It helps it be less scary, because for the feminine, a big thing is, and in this world, a big thing is the frequency of fear. And if we at a nervous system, subconscious level feel scared of the unknown, of the unfamiliar, we will either fight, flee, or freeze. And that can be very tricky to navigate on your own, if you're already a little bit overwhelmed and scared of the process. So anyway, all that to say that, of course, it's multidimensional because that's how I operate. But if you go back to your cycle, again, biological truth is your foundation. Like I say, go back to your cycle and just really start tracking it, which is going to require you to surrender to the reality of getting to know your body on a level that you've probably not known her, because health class in school and taking the pill for X amount of years has not allowed you to know her. It has not. So that journey in and of itself, just starting out by tracking your cycle, really getting to know the signs and the language of your body, the Oracle will introduce herself to you and you'll know what the next step is.
Wow. That was so amazing. There were like so many
Oh.
pieces there. I was like, oh, no way. Yeah, like you said that the woman is curvy and that that our cycle holds us, and like all of those pieces are so nourishing to hear.
Oh,
And
good.
it's just gonna allow people to feel, yeah, not so scared. And even as you were talking, I was almost like feeling like, the all of these horrible mental diseases or issues that so many people are facing nowadays, like chronic anxiety, depression, bipolarism. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I bet you a lot of it is because we're not listening to our
Mm-hmm.
bodies. Like, we're not paying attention to the intuition and the cycle, and like just allowing ourselves to rest and to
Yeah.
really feel like what the body is asking of us. And so that was
Yeah.
just so incredible of,
Oh, good.
thank you
I'm
so
glad.
much. Yeah. I feel like that was just so incredibly beautiful. I feel like I'm feeling pretty complete. Is there anything coming
Mm.
through for you around devotion? I feel like this was the last piece I just wanted to dive into with you, is your beautiful work of devotion. And it really is, I guess, just listening to the body. Hey, like even
Mm-hmm.
just attuning to the body is such a sacred piece of devotion, and
Mm-hmm.
reattuning ourselves to God. If you have any like final words on devotion that are coming through for you.
Yeah. And because I know my cycle, I will not disclaimer, but caveat, I am full ovulation mode right now. And you'll notice if you follow me consistently on social media, I mean, I'm very open about where I am in my cycle on social media because it's just how I live and it's how I work and it's how I work with women. So like I don't, it's not like some secret, right? But when I'm in like late follicular and ovulation phase, there's a lot of dots connect to sex. And I use sex as, well, number one, it's a co-creative act, it's an intimate act. It's such a powerful energetic exchange, but it's also a wonderful teaching tool because I think we all at a certain point have experience with this um, experience, this human experience. So when you talk about devotion, and I talk about devotion a lot with my clients and online, I've mentioned it too, where for women, consistency looks different than it does for men. Discipline is very masculine, and devotion is where the feminine lives. And it's a big conversation, but to try to whittle it down a little bit, I just want you to feel into your body, drawing from maybe a sexual experience that you've had or one that you dream of. Okay. Draw down into your body and feel the difference between you're disciplining yourself to show up and have sex versus you're wet at the thought of showing up and having sex. It's a completely different frequency.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. That's the difference. Is like your pussy knows. She just knows, but we don't listen to her. I mean, I've definitely had encounters where before I was aware enough to understand, um, she was not having it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, good girl syndrome, performed, didn't listen, complete disconnect, right? And we do that so much, whether it's with our food, it's our workouts, we're just completely disconnected. We're just showing up and getting it done. And I'm not saying there's not some value in that. Obviously, like consenting to sex is still a different conversation than consenting to being um, being present with what you're doing in your commitment to nutrition and working out. Okay, it's still a different conversation, but I like to have these dots connect because it helps it bring it to a more visceral level.
Mm-hmm.
We can feel it in our body maybe a little bit more when we talk about sex, because just nothing would exist without sex. Okay, just nothing would. That's a whole nother caveat we can talk about another time maybe. But excuse me. So when you feel into the frequency of devotion, it's just so on a blood brain level. Like, you feel the flush differently. You feel um it's sort of like an emptying of your mind at a certain point. You get a reprieve from overthinking, and you're present. You're not thinking about, hopefully, if it's a good experience, you're not thinking about the dishes, or the laundry, hopefully. It's this almost escape hatch into this just beautiful experience that you're sharing with your other half. And it's very much harkens back to that for me, is if we allow ourselves to descend viscerally into the womb and into the body and trust her leadership and her responsibility to these sorts of experiences, there's so much that she has to teach us. Just like with hormones, if we're experiencing certain symptomologies, which is her language that she uses to talk to us because she doesn't speak English or Chinese or anything like that. If we are willing to listen and to learn, it will open a whole garden of devotion that's available to you. Because just as when you start returning devotion to her, she will return devotion to you. It's that give and take circuitry. So there's I'm going to leave it there because there's so many places I could go with the devotion conversation, and that's a constant conversation I have in my containers. But I love having that conversation, so I just don't want to take all day to take up your time, because it's a big concept, and it's hard to it's a conversation, and it's a back and forth. It's not like something that I like to preach from the pulpit type of energy, but it is going to look a little bit different for each woman's experience. And one of the reasons I just loved you coming to me to initiate this time together is just that you have such a great perspective on the Oracle, and having these conversations with her leading, because I've always said that our bodies, our hormones are not our enemy. She is an oracle if we're willing to listen and surrender in humility to what she has to teach us.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so amazing, so nourishing.
Yeah.
She is just guiding us and leading us. And thank you so much for tapping into the devotion piece. It's such a big, like you said, big piece, but yeah, that was so beautiful. So thank you so much, Angel. Where can
Thank you.
all of the listeners find you and your work and be able to connect with you online or your website?
Yeah, thank you. The easiest place, and the place I hang out the most with people and am available, is Instagram. So if you just head over to Instagram and look for Flex Your Feminine, even if you don't have an Instagram account, you can still find me. It's a public profile, and my website is linked there with my free guide and my offerings. So yeah, I'd love to see you guys over there, and feel free to message me and talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much, love, for coming on. That was so incredible and beautiful. And you have such a amazing, so much amazing wisdom coming from you and pouring out of you. And yeah, I'll put all your links below so it'll be easy for you guys to find her and connect with her. And thank you so much for listening. I will see you guys next week. Bye bye.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Oracle Codex Podcast. It means so much that you're here listening to the Oracle speak and share their wisdom and enter the temple space. If you'd like to stay up to date on this podcast, please subscribe on your streaming platform. Please give us a big like. And if you have any opinions, questions, concerns, or love to share, please comment it below. If you want to find Grace, the host of this podcast, you can find her on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and at her website, creationalcodes.com. Thank you so much again for being here, and we will see you next time.